performance.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like, or ironic in a funny sense, looking back over your life and career with music. It really was performance based for a whole long time before it kind of transitioned more into songwriting, which I'm so interested in. We focus heavily on songwriters here on the show, and seeing that really your songwriting was kind of a challenge almost to an extent. But you really had a long life of performance and stuff like that. So when did you kind of transition from that musical theater to fronting a band and playing out?
Well, that took a long time too, Chris. I got into business. I was an advertising guy, a writer. I wrote for a magazine, newspaper.
Yeah,
I've written 5 books. I mean, I was a writer, and I owned an ad agency, and I like the creative aspect of it, and also running the business. So to be honest, I mean, I disappeared from music for 35, 40 years,
wow.
and it wasn't until about 20 years ago I had a guy ask me if I'd be the front man in his band, and I was so out of music. I was like, well, wait a minute, what's a front man? I really said that. I think I
Yeah,
wasn't even thinking. And we sang the blues and we sang rock and roll, and these guys were really blues musicians at their heart. And man, I really got into the blues, and so that was about 20 years ago. Part of what I also did was I said, hey, I got to contribute more than just singing. Maybe singers have that feeling, but I feel like a lot of the band's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and so I said I'm going to learn how to play the harmonica. That's going to work in the blues groove that we had.
yeah,
And so I started going to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and I would attend these harmonica camps that would last a week. I got really steeped in the blues down there, met some great blues musicians, and ultimately met a guy who said, hey, you can kind of do this stuff. You really need to start writing music, and we're going to do a record someday. I said, man, I'd love to be on your record. Well, this guy's Ralph Carter, and he wrote songs and played and recorded and was the tour musical director for Eddie Money, who was
yeah.
big time rock and roll. And this is Ralph Carter telling me, hey, you need to write music. He said, it's going to be your record. You're going to write the songs. I'd never written a song before. That was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And Ralph was serious, man. He started saying that maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, and he kept bugging me about it. Eventually, I saw an article in, believe it or not, the Wall Street Journal. I was a business guy at the time, about this new recording studio in Muscle Shoals. I snapped a little picture of it with my iPhone. I texted it to Ralph. I said, "Okay, game on, Ralph. Here's where we're going to do our record. Here's where we're going to record." Now, I was just kidding. And Ralph came back and said, "Okay, when do we record?" And it's been fast forward since that day 5 years ago. We booked the recording time before I'd ever finished a song.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. I've written for my whole life as an adult, and even as a kid. That's the only way I made it through school. I can't do math very well, can't do science, but I can write. And so I wasn't daunted by it. And having been sort of soaked and steeped and simmered in the blues, it's like, man, I get it, man. You're down on your luck. You're a loser, and I can totally identify. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do this. So 3, 4 months later, after we booked the time, I met with Ralph. We turned a handful of song lyrics that I wrote into demos. He hired the studio musicians. We went to the studio and cut our first album. It's back there on the wall, called "Stuck in the Mud,"
Yeah.
and signed a record deal. It hit the charts, all sorts of things. And I kind of felt like writing, you said you focus on songwriting. To me, the whole trick is an idea for a song. I like that song we just listened to about looking for my baby. The guy's, he's a liar. He's not really looking for his baby. He has no girlfriend. So I think some of them are funny. Some of them are tragic, about a friend of mine in high school who he's not with us anymore, made a lot of bad decisions. And that's perfect for the blues to say, hey, man, things go wrong. And some of them are autobiographical. I wrote a song called 3 Hours from Memphis when I literally looked down at my GPS and my Ford Explorer, man. And I said, where in the hell am I? And I looked down and said, 3 hours from Memphis. I'm like, oh, man, that's a song.
Yeah. Sure is.
I was driving there to meet Ralph Carter to go work on songs. I was meeting him at the Memphis airport. And I remember I was shaking. I had this whole idea for the song in my head, start to finish. I knew the whole song. And it was like, I can't pull off the road because if I do, I'll forget it. So I got out a little pad of paper, and over here on the armrest, I wrote the lyrics to the song.
While you're driving.
While I'm driving.
Wow.
And I remember when I was done with the song, I looked up and it was about an hour from Memphis. And I have no recollection of that 2 hours other than I was just telling this story about this guy who's on his way to Memphis to meet a music guy. And he's been working for 15 years to get there. And he's finally got the meeting with the music man, And here's the crazy thing, Chris. My record label that I signed with, Big Radio Records, is in Memphis. I had no clue. I'd never heard of them. I'd never met them. I didn't even think this was an autobiographical song. It said 15 years of paying dues. And I had been singing and goofing around with music for 15 years. I didn't even realize it. I'm writing this song about myself.
Wow.
And then, it dawned on me about a year ago. It's like, well, you dummy. That song's about you. You are on your way to Memphis because you ended up with a record label in Memphis, and you did pay your dues for 15 years. And so, well, there's crazy. I'm just blabbering about writing songs.
No, it's great. It's great. You mentioned. Let's try to unpack a little bit of this. So you mentioned heading to Clarksdale Clarksdale.
Clarksdale, yeah.
This was kind of an important thing for you, obviously. You met Ralph down there, but this all started because you wanted to learn how to play harmonica. That's why you ended up in Mississippi. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Wow.
And, yeah, because there's this guy, John Gindick. He's out in California. And I think it's probably hands down very clear that he's sold more how to play the harmonica CDs and books than anybody in the history of the harmonica. And we're talking in the millions. And he would run a week-long camp at the Shack Up Inn in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And I went down there. I met Ralph. He had some great players. R.J. Michaud, who's an incredible blues player, writer, harmonica player, plays all over Europe. I mean, he I'm learning from these guys. And I not only learned the harmonica, but, you can't help but pick up the vibe of where this music came from in the Delta about the blues when you're there. And so I think that kind of seeped into me as well. So, yeah, I kind of learned to play the harmonica in the car because you can't play the piano in the car. But, I throw a harp in my hand and put a John Gindick instructional CD on the CD player and play along and do jam tracks and all that kind of stuff. So, but then getting down to Clarksdale and seeing where the blues came from, it's just like, I love it. I love every bit of it. And it became a real refuge for me. I was still a business guy, still owned a business. And man, I couldn't wait to get back to Clarksdale, which is another song of mine, which actually got to #1 on the Roots Music Report blues single chart last year.
I love this idea of I feel like there's a part of your character here, right? Because you get a late start in music. You talked about 35, 40 years hiatus from it. You come back as kind of a cover artist, frontman in a blues band. And honestly, at this time in your life, you could be very complacent. You could be very happy and just settle for what you have, which is better than most musicians, let's be honest, right? Being a frontman in a blues band isn't so bad. But you don't want to be complacent. You want to get better. So this speaks to your character, I feel, as somebody listening to your story. Instead of just resting there and settling for what you were, you decided to chase and become better by becoming a harmonica player. And look what it's opened up for you. Like, Clarksdale has been kind of the change to bring you from that blues artist to a songwriter and a globally recognized blues artist now. I mean, the impact of Clarksdale is pretty huge on Christopher Wyze, isn't it?
Well, the impact of Clarksdale is huge on the world. I feel like I'm not overstating that.
Yeah.
That music came up out of the ground there. W.C. Handy, 5 miles from Clarksdale, discovers this guy playing the slide guitar. The first time maybe it had been exposed to somebody who was really connected to the music world, like W.C. Handy, who was a band leader. And he took that music and popularized it across America. than across the world. And so that's still Clarksdale today. And if you walk down the street today, you and I, Chris, in Clarksdale, one of every two people we run into there, and I'm talking Monday, would be from outside the U.S. They stream into Clarksdale because it is ground zero for the blues. It's where the blues came from, and there's such reverence and respect for it. And it was my refuge for a few years as I continued to be a business guy and work too hard. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm discovering there's a little more to me than just being this guy who works too hard. And it kind of opened up a part of me that had been shoved aside for a long time. I'll be real honest. I got a friend who's a psychologist, and we trade stories about everything. He goes, "Hey, Chris, you got this Christopher Wyze, and then you have this alter ego of." And then he says my real name. He says my real name. That's my alter ego. He said Christopher Wyze is the real you, man. Mm-hmm. And I stuffed away for, I don't know, 35 years.
Man, I feel that to my core, man. Like, my real name is my alter ego, and a lot of people think the Boston Chris is the alter ego, but it's not. Like, when I'm at my real job, I feel like that's like the fake me. And then when I'm doing this is the real me. This is me being able to be who I want to be, right? And I feel that to my core, man.
That's cool. I just want to say that's really cool, and I can totally identify with that, Chris. Because and that's why I love this music thing so much. People say, "Are you nervous when you're recording in the studio?" I'd never done that before. No, I'm having fun.
Yep.
Are you nervous talking to Boston Chris? No, I'm talking about music. I'm having fun.
Yeah, you get that anticipatory anxiety, right? I mean, that's always going to be there. But like once you're doing instead of waiting for it to do, then it's different, right? Like, I feel like if you don't get anxiety before something like that, you're probably not supposed to do it anymore, right? Like,
well, I think it's almost an excitement. I'll put mine more on the excitement side of the meter than anxiety side. I'm just so keyed up to I talk to you. I mean, I've been thinking about it all day. It's really fun to think about it, and now actually to do it. So it's cool.
It's dope, man. I love that.